Doctor Who Season by Season. Season 16 Review. The 16th season of Doctor Who aired from late 1978 through to early 1979. It was the fifth season to star Tom Baker as the Fourth Doctor, the second to be produced by the godlike Graham Williams and script edited by Anthony Reid, and the first and only season to star Mary Tamm as the Doctor's new companion, the first incarnation of Romana, marking the first time since his granddaughter Susan that a member of the Doctor's own race was a member of the TARDIS crew. Season 16 also stands out as being the first time in Doctor Who history that a season featured an overall season arc, that arc also leading to Season 16 sometimes being known simply as the Key to Time season. The Doctor is recruited, somewhat unwillingly, by a godlike entity known as the White Guardian to find the individual pieces of a massively powerful device known as the Key to Time, which has the power to change reality and balance the forces of good and evil in the universe. These pieces are scattered throughout the whole of time and space and disguised as other objects in order to avoid detection. It soon transpires, however, that the White Guardian is not the only one after the Key to Time, so too is his opposite number, the devil-like Black Guardian, and needless to say he wants the Key to Time for decidedly more nefarious purposes. The season begins with the Rye Boss Operation, written by the legendary Robert Holmes. This story kicks off the quest arc and introduces Mary Tamm as Romana, a rather snooty young time lady who initially regards the Doctor as a bit of an idiot, and he is decidedly less than pleased at having her foisted on him by the White Guardian. The banter between the two is hilarious throughout. The first segment of the Key leads them to Rye Boss, a medieval-like world where they become involved in the schemes of a pair of intergalactic conmen, Gurren and Unstuff, to rip off a deposed tyrant, the Bittergruff Vindicate. I will make no bones about it and simply say that the Rye Boss Operation is one of my top 5 favorite stories of all time. This story is wildly underrated, and indeed there's a segment of fandom, you know, the type that are only after bangs, flashes and Daleks, and who think Journey's End is the height of Doctor Who script writing, tee-hee chuckle guffaw titter, that regard this story as boring. Why? Because the Rye Boss Operation isn't about any of those things. It's a story dripping with atmosphere and character and brilliant dialogue delivered by wonderful actors including the new TARDIS team and the guest actors. Ian Cuthbertson is an absolute hoot as the larger-than-life Gurren, and Nigel Plaskett is very likeable as his more naive protégé. Paul Seed is convincingly menacing and dangerous as the Gruff, and there's a very nice smaller supporting role for Timothy Bateson as Binro, a Galileo-like character who has been persecuted for using science to challenge the current religious beliefs of Ribosian society. The Rye Boss Operation is a story that would be well suited to a theatrical production, and thus a story you can't imagine New Who doing in a million years. Might scare the horses after all. The sets and costumes are gorgeous and the direction perfect. I love this story to bits and I reckon it's a strong contender for Holmes's best script for the series. Massively underappreciated. The second story of the season is The Pirate Planet, written by a rather obscure sci-fi writer called Douglas Adams. Never heard of him. I doubt he went on to anything else after this. Kidding aside, lol. The Pirate Planet is one of the most popular stories of the season in fan circles, yet to be honest I'm not that keen. In fact I think it's not only the weakest of the 3 scripts Adams wrote for Who, with both City of Death and Shada the following season being miles better, but my least favorite story of this season. That's not entirely down to the script, it has to be said, the direction and the guest cast are both pretty mediocre and limp. Indeed, the only entertainment I get from the guest cast is the old man, who, and I'm not sure if it's the same actor or not, but who very much reminds me of Bob's father from Blackadder 2. I keep expecting him to tell his daughter why bother going to all the trouble of challenging the Menshads when you can make a living lying on your back. I'm not a big fan of Pirate Planet. It's not terrible or anything, and the ideas are cool and Tom and Mary are great, as they are all year, but it's definitely not one of my favorites. The next story is The Stones of Blood, written by new writer David Fisher. Stones is a vast improvement on Pirate Planet and a great little piece of gothic horror mixed with sci-fi. Because of the nature of the season's arc, Stones is the only story of the season to be set on Earth, and it's one of those much-loved little villages where strange things are afoot. Very strange, given the tendency of at least some of the stones in the village's medieval stone circle to move about and suck people's blood. Some fans object to the story's shifting tone midway through, changing from gothic horror to a more sci-fi style when the Doctor gets trapped on a ship in hyperspace and put on trial by a really obnoxious pair of security bots, but I find it all very entertaining. Stones has some beautiful location filming and very atmospheric direction along with a genuinely wonderful guest star in Beatrice Lehman, who all but steals the show from Tom as the delightfully eccentric old Professor Rumford. Stones is charming, thoroughly entertaining fun. The next story is The Androids of Tara, also written by David Fisher. Tara is another one that seems to divide fandom, with some finding it a dull pastiche of The Prisoner of Zenda and others finding it a delightfully charming old-school swashbuckler. Tough shit for the former group because I'm definitely one of the latter. Indeed, Androids is up there with Rye Boss as my favorite story of the season and is well up there into my top 20 stories of all time. I find it delightful, extremely well made and again infused with the real charm and warmth that this season and indeed this era has in spades that makes it so incredibly watchable and enjoyable. Mary Tam gets to have fun in multiple roles, as Romana and the Princess Strella, and various android doubles of both, and Peter Jeffrey is simply magnificent as Count Grendel, a thoroughly hissable yet charmingly villainous bounder. I like that word. Bounder. It sums the character and the story up beautifully, and Androids is, like Rye Boss, a story I absolutely adore. 10 out of 10 from me. The next story is The Power of Kroll. Fandom hates The Power of Kroll and regards it as the worst of the season and one of the worst of all time. Needless to say, fandom can go take a running jump off a fucking cliff as far as I'm concerned, because Kroll is yet another story from this season that I thoroughly enjoy. It's got great location work, a fine guest cast, a giant monster that is realized surprisingly impressively, and a fine script from Bob Holmes, that while not up there with Rye Boss or his other best work, is still typically great stuff, filled with excellent dialogue and world building. Another thoroughly enjoyable story dissed by fandom because Philip Murdoch threw a paddy at not getting to play the baddie this time. As Ace might say, Gordon Bennett, what a bunch of spots. The final story of the season is The Armageddon Factor, a 6-part tale from perennial 70s who scribes Bob Baker and Dave Martin. Oh dear, you might think. I haven't exactly been entirely complimentary toward Baker and Martin at times in my reviews, and fandom isn't too keen on this one either, but I have to say I actually still like this one a lot. It's not one of their absolute best, but it certainly isn't down there with the mutants or fucking Underworld. Thank Christ. Despite its length and sometimes rambling narrative, Armageddon Factor is actually again very entertaining and has a lot to recommend it. Tom and Mary, in her last appearance, are as excellent as ever, as is K9, who's great all season by the way, and the guest cast is also pretty solid and interesting. The great John Woodvine, I'm sure if there was some kind of monster roaming the Yorkshire moors we'd have seen it on the telly, is terrific as the single-minded to the point of being utterly mad Marshal, and while it's a shame he largely disappears in the second half of the story, he's replaced by Barry Jackson as the wonderfully unlikely Drax, a renegade Time Lord who talks and acts like a Cockney white boy straight out of Minder or Only Fools and Horses or something. He's a hoot. We also get the Shadow, a demonic figure who is a dark servant of the Black Guardian, played by the great William Squire, who is otherwise probably most famous as the Last Hunter in seasons 3 and 4 of classic 60s and 70s British spy series Callan. We also get the Black Guardian for the first time, played of course by the magnificent Valentine Dyall, who will be back to plague the Doctor in season 20. Of course, There's another notable guest actor in Armageddon Factor, that being the lovely Lalla Ward. Ward plays Princess Astra, but so impressed the producer and Tom Baker, especially Tom Lol, that she was hired to play the second incarnation of Romana when Mary Tam decided to leave, which she did frankly fantastically throughout season 17 and most of season 18. She's not quite as good as Astra as she is as Romana, though that's largely down to the character being a bit of a drip, but nonetheless it's fantastic to see her and rather wonderful to have the two Romanas on screen together. Overall, Armageddon Factor brings the season to a satisfying conclusion, and its final conceit, that the last segment of the key is actually a human being, is a particularly brilliant idea, and one that may have been an influence on the fantastic fifth season of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love season 16. It is my fourth favorite season of Doctor Who ever made and a perennial and much loved staple in my house. I can give the Key to Time season nothing short of an A+.